Hello and welcome to the webinar this evening. We are going to be looking at how technology is rewiring the next generation of learners, very much looking into what those jobs, careers, but also just how it's affecting this next generation and really starting to go, okay, well, how and what do we need to do within our own classrooms or within our own homes to really help them and support them in learning, and also just utilizing those future tech careers as well. Without further notice, we will just get started. This is a recording, just as time is of the essence. And unfortunately, we couldn't get all of our panelists together and recording and all of that in aligned. But what we have done is I've recorded this first part of the session, and then we also have our panelists as well as a recorded session. However, you will have the opportunity to directly contact all of us, and we will be there live answering any questions you may have throughout this webinar. All right, let's get started. Before we begin, I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we are gathering. For me, I'm in Brisbane City, so respecting both the Turrbal and Yagara people, recognising them as the First Nations representatives of the lands in which we are learning and speaking on today, paying respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and understanding that this always was and always will be a place of learning, teaching, and education, of course. Alrighty, just as a bit of an intro and get to know who I am, my name is Kobe Lee. I'm really honored to be here talking about all things technology and how it's rewiring the next generation. Some of you may say you're a bit young, but I am a proud Gen Zer. You can call me Kobe, you can call me Lee. What I do tell the students is all you do is don't call me Miss, just not yet. I'm the head of growth and partnerships here at BOP Industries, which essentially means that I really step into that role of helping provide the students with opportunities with industry, very much like this webinar as well. So giving them that opportunity to connect with real world opportunities. I studied my Bachelor of Business Management in Psychology, and have now moved into my Masters of Teaching. I've been doing workshop teaching for around 6 years now, and it essentially led me into my Masters, which is very exciting. A bit of a background about who I am as well as we talk about this is I studied at MIT in the USA for a bit. I also lived in Rome and studied there for a year, but I'm also an author and entrepreneur in my spare time as well. So that's just a bit about me as we talk about, those future tech careers as well. As you can see, I don't have a very big tech background, but you'd be surprised by how much technology I have had to implement, especially helping other young entrepreneurs start their businesses, but also just in that kind of area of innovation as well. Now, for those who may not know us, we are from BOP Industries. We're an education company and we travel all around Australia and occasionally overseas, teaching all things future of work, personal branding, entrepreneurship, innovation, anything you can think of, we probably teach. And we have the great pleasure of being able to work with students right down to year 4 all the way to university, but also getting to do things like this, such as professional development with teachers and industry as well. Now, we're really grateful to be able to partner with ACS today, which is the Australian Computing Society, the Information and Communication Technology Gateway to Industry School program. So if we do have any of our gateway schools on here, welcome. These guys have really helped in bringing this to life. They're also an amazing way and program for you to get involved with to make sure that you're implementing technology correctly in your school, but also giving those opportunities to those students as well. But we will hear a bit more about that later. Now, we understand that technology is changing. We've seen it change so rapidly over the past couple of years. Some people may be really scared, some people may be really excited. Wherever you're sitting on this spectrum, it's okay. I think a really cool thing I heard last night was somebody say to me, we freaked out when the internet was introduced. We freaked out when the computer was introduced. We panicked when the calculator was introduced. AI and technology, as it starts to rapidly advance, it's just another step in our evolution. It's also another step in a tool for us as teachers, but also as parents as well, to kind of implement into our life. Now, we are going to be looking at a couple things today, very much focusing on those different things. We're going to be looking at that future of work very specifically. So what are the opportunities? What is it looking like? Also working with young people. So for my parents and for my teachers, this is a really cool opportunity to maybe try and connect with them in a bit of a more Gen Z, Gen Alpha way. And then also digital technologies for education. This is a really requested topic. as a Gen Z company, we really focus on making sure we have purposeful technology integrations to make sure that we're not just putting technology in the classroom for the sake of it. Now, as we move across, we will get to hear from three amazing tech ambassadors. These are guys who have all done technology careers, have gone through the ACS program, and have spent about an hour with me earlier in the couple of days, really sharing their experiences, their projects, their journeys within that world of technology. We break down some really cool like things that I really had misbeliefs on technology, that being around math or intelligence, or if you need a very certain skill set, and what those skill sets look like as well. Even if you just want to keep this webinar and share the panel with your students, I think that would be really beneficial, just because each of these guys have a very interesting backstory and have worked in some really cool careers, and both in entrepreneurship, game design, and in creativity as well. So I think it's going to be worthwhile listening to at the very end. Now, when we look at that future of work and why it's important, some people are resisting it, some people aren't. If we really start to look into it, we really need to think about how young people are communicating, how they're learning, how they're starting to create, entertain themselves, and also engage with the world around them. Long gone are the days where you have to wait for that one episode to stream on the TV. You can plug, play, launch, freeze, and pause everything now. So understanding that this entire generation is looking at things very differently, and then they're going to approach challenges differently because of that. And we know that with the research, my favorite thing is to ask everyone to Google something. And we know that 96% of young students with online access are using social media or other platforms to acquire knowledge. So if you're looking for your favorite restaurant or a good coffee, no longer are students looking at Google Maps or Google. They're jumping on things like TikTok, Instagram, ChatGPT. They're jumping on there to find first-hand experiences or recommendations. We also know that with hiring, the employees are saying that they are more likely to hire someone who is much better at using digital skills, who's able to navigate it like it's their second language, being able to maneuver around and share that as well, because it's what makes them competitive in comparison to previous generations. And then also technology. We know that 64% of teachers believe that using technology makes students risk takers, but also self-sufficient researchers. Now, this is a bit more of a controversial one. However, technology enhances the student to be able to research more because they have more access to digital literacy, but they also just have so many more research papers they can access because of this. And so that's giving them quite a powerful tool as well. We then also know that it's really shaping that attention. Everyone talks about this attention deficit generation, where we're unable to keep students sitting for such a long period of time now. But really going, okay, well, why is that the case? What are we waiting for? What is this? I think a really interesting thing I've noticed as an educator in the last 6 to 12 months is this need to have their emails open on their laptops. And at first, I was like, why are we waiting for our emails? Are we getting grades? And the conversation of, well, actually, they're waiting for an email either from their friend or from a teacher or from anyone to get that dopamine boost. So to get that little flag in their head that goes, oh, information. So it's like a stimulant for them when they can't have their phones in the classroom. We also know that we've got three very main things that is what drives this generation and also changes the way we teach and interact with them. The 8-second filter. It's a big one. It's really been pushed a lot more further now, especially with those with TikTok and the short form videos. So the muscle between the brain on which you are learning and also delaying gratification is getting weaker. And so we know that students only have 8 seconds. We know that young people only have 8 seconds to grasp their attention before you lose them. So you have to try and convince them to listen to your entire lesson within 8 seconds. Now, that can be hard, and that's completely understandable. And we'll talk a bit about that later as well. We also know the high bar theory. So we know that the attention isn't disappearing. They can listen and they can sit there. They just have a higher expectation of what you're saying and the content you're delivering, for it to be more engaging, more relevant, more meaningful, because of the fact that they're overloaded with so much information, both being online and just in general as well. To choose a career pathway these days is like having 1,001 options laid out in front of you. So therefore, they're wanting to make sure that when they're giving you their attention, that it's going to mean something for them. We also know we've got platform conditioning, which is probably a big combination of both of these. With the short form platforms are really training young people to expect not as like more information in less seconds. So 20, 30-second videos, catching your attention, quick form, making sure you're staying in tune and staying aligned a lot quicker. So that's kind of what we've noticed and what the research is saying at the moment. But when we really start to look further into that future of work, we know that Gen Z makes up a big portion of our population, with being our digital natives. They weren't born with technology, but technology came about while we were alive. Then we have our Generation Alpha, who are our generation, called Generation Glass. They grew up with touchscreens. They were just normal as they grew up. And then now we've also got Generation Beta. So congratulations to anyone the Generation Beta child, but that's this year. This is 2026. And so we have now, for the first time ever, 5 generations within the world, which we've never had before. So learning to adapt and speak to different age groups is going to become very prevalent in the world. When we look at what and why it's changing, we know that 52% of the workforce is going to be completed by machines. We've already seen it happen. We're seeing it happen quite often, with Shopify putting out their launch of that if you can't prove that the job can be done by AI, then they're not going to hire anyone. Really starting to go, okay, well, what makes us more unique as humans? We also know that there's going to be additional 50 billion smart devices connected by 2030. In your own time, I really recommend counting how many devices you own in your household that connects to the internet. I know that some students have up to 30. That's your Apple Watch, your Kindle, your iPhone, your iPad, your smart TV, your Google Home, all of those all connect to that internet. We also know that we have a changing demographic in the sense that remote work is becoming so popular post COVID. That's going to have an additional billion people contributing to that remote working, where essentially all you need is access to the Wi-Fi. In addition to that technology advancing, we know that there's going to be an additional 2 billion people on this earth by 2045, which is absolutely crazy. But when you consider the amount of technology that we have, babies are being born earlier and safer. We also have our elderly aging a lot older due to the technology that we have to keep them around. When we look at the cyberspace, and when we really go, okay, well, how is that technology evolving and kind of what do people need in that space? There's such a big demand for it, and arguably are the most well-paid people out there in the technology space. We know that there's 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs globally, really reflecting that we need people in this space and working in it rapidly. We know that there's those technological innovations, and some of these roles have never been created before, and they're coming out very rapidly, especially with the creation of AI and the ethics behind it. We also know that there's the technologically driven in all the careers. So AI, robotics, advancement in technologies are changing every sector. From you, everyone thinks their sector may be safe, but every sector is being impacted by AI and machinery, such as the trade, such as health, such as education. All of them are being impacted, and so we have to really start to go, well, okay, how is this being impacted, and why is it being impacted, and what can we do to help our students prepare for that? And then, of course, finally, we have the investment in the digital economy, which is growing very rapidly, really driving demand for those software, cybersecurity, and tech infrastructure, especially in preparation for the Olympics here in Australia as well. So those are kind of just the key points of why this is so important and why students need to understand that working within the technology space and also exploring it has so much potential. and so much opportunity there for them. And you are welcome to share these with your students, because I think it would be really important for them to see kind of that opportunity. And money, unfortunately, a lot of the time motivates students to get on board and explore more of their careers as well. Now, when we talk about working with young people, this is general. This is very general information, very this is just our experience. Obviously, every student is different and unique, and there's no perfect way to be able to work with a young person. This is just our kind of bread and butter of what we do and how what we think works when engaging with that next generation. But when we think about that, obviously we can give you the perfect educator, the perfect way of who you think might be doing it. But what I really want you to think about in this journey is reflecting on any teachers, coaches, managers, or just anyone within that space who supported you, and thinking about how they motivated you, what left you inspired, what made them likable, what made them different, what made you learn from them. And then also thinking about those ones that left a negative impact, because that's what you're modeling off, right? So when you're thinking about presenting yourself to either your child or to your students, thinking, okay, well, this person is my ideal, this person isn't. I'm sure everyone's had a bad experience at school, or and also a good experience, hopefully. And really going, okay, well, what do I want to do, and what kind of person do I want to be to show up with my students? When we start going a little bit further and looking into what that does and how we break it down, the first one is building rapport. Now more than ever, rapport is so important, even with your own children. If you're a parent listening to this, 100%. I think there's always this common belief that your children will just always trust and follow your lead. However, that's not always the case. If you get a headstrong student or a headstrong child, they will need to understand why they're following you, to understand why they're listening to you. And building rapport is the biggest one for that. We know that building those relationships is so important. A lot of students will not listen to you. They will not do anything unless they know they should listen to you, unless they like you. They also have to understand why you're genuinely standing in front of them and why you're teaching them, because now more than ever, of course, they're really concerned about people standing up in front of them and wasting their time. So being, okay, well, be authentic, be fun, lay out the foundation of why you are stepping into this role and teaching them that day, or why it's impactful for them to be listening to. What we really like to do is do this activity and think, okay, where do you fall into in a team? And we call it the perfect team layout. We have 4 personas, and we really like to get students to figure out which one they are. And I encourage you as a teacher to also lean into that, or a kitchen table activity, thinking about what kind of area do you fall into? Are you that hipster, that creative design focused person? Are you maybe a hustler who's a leader, spokesperson who's putting their hand up for everything? Maybe you're the hacker, the problem solver, the designer, the person figuring out the logistics. Or maybe you're a humanist, which is what I call my yappers, but they're our user advocates. They're making sure everyone on the team is involved and being listened to as well. And so this really helps in understanding what your students think about themselves, but also where they stand within a social dynamic as well. Additionally, if you wanted to take it a step further and really start to go, well, okay, let's figure out who we are as people, I really encourage you to do the Myers-Briggs personality test. It really gives you an idea of your personality in a lot more depth. It also helps students connect with who they relate to. This test gives them the opportunity to go, oh, I'm like Oprah, or I'm like a bunch of different people. And then they also give mythical characters as well. So it could be the same personality type as Percy Jackson. Kids love that. They love to know who they are representing or who they are like, or being able to argue whether it's wrong or right. And so this is a really cool activity, even if you're just setting the foundations, because even in a technology classroom, they might go, well, I don't need to know what this is. You 100% do. You 100% need to know where your strengths are, because that's what makes you an effective and also efficient person in life and in your career. We understand that when you're doing it, it's really important to talk to them about their passions and their strengths. And even you as a teacher or a parent modeling this for them, being like, hey, look, I'm really good at designing, I'm really good at creating, but I'm actually not very good at math, and that's okay. But I'm really passionate about learning. Being authentic and being fair with them shows them that they're able to also make mistakes and also try new things as well. The next one is our step two, really looking at that storytelling. They love a good story. Generation Z, Generation Alpha, they love a good story. They want to know why they're getting involved. They want to know the little snippets of your day to day life. The little side quests is what they would call them. Really going, okay, the power of this inspires them to listen. Really going, okay, well, when we're listening to somebody talk, you're taking us on an adventure. You're not just lecturing at us, but think about the story you're telling them. So we always can think about laying it out as like a challenge. So what is a professional challenge you faced and overcome? What is a time that you really succeeded professionally? What time it reminded you of why you wanted to do this? And just giving them a little showcase of who you are and what you're working towards. But also getting them to do it as well gives them a lot of relevance, and being like, okay, well, look, everyone has challenges, everyone has successes, and also everyone kind of needs a why as to why you want to do something, and why you're stepping into this new kind of area that we are exploring. When we are talking about stories, it's really important to connect it with people that they can relate to. Finding examples within your own school community, within your own family, finding people you can connect with online. A big one that in the technology space, it's really impressive. I recommend showing what that industry looks like or what that professional portfolio is. I mean, Melanie Perkins, Australian founder of Canva, she started off as a university tutor. She started off selling handmade scarves and then went into Design Canva, which is a technological solution. We also have Nick, who's the founder of PayPal. And then we also have Jintaji, who's the creator of Teeths, which is another technological app. So thinking, okay, well, what are these people? Who are they? How do students connect to them, even if they want to research them, getting them to understand why it's important to, connect to these stories and also almost replicate them in some way as well. When we look at the next one, I really talk about that differentiation. So really going, okay, no longer can we sit in front of a room and lecture to people. No longer can we just say something and expect it to happen. We have to really think about the different learning styles. And the best way to break that down is really thinking, okay, depending on who's in front of me, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Well, sometimes there's a wrong way, but thinking about, okay, there's no single right way to engage a young person. Just back to what I said at the start, thinking, okay, if I'm building rapport, if I'm showing real life stories, I also have to make sure that I'm able to differentiate my learning and my teaching for them. And this doesn't have to be hard. When we think about it, sometimes all these additional things as teachers and as parents can be quite challenging. So we've broken it down into a bit of a simpler way. Thinking about those learning styles. If I was to ask you right now, if you could learn about a famous tech brand in order to teach your students about it next week, how would you prefer to learn about it? If I told you to research something, how would you do it? Would you read a book? Would you listen to a podcast, watch a movie, watch a tutorial explaining it? Think about how you would like to learn something. Or do you sit there reading a bunch of research articles? Because trust me, everyone likes to learn differently. Not everyone likes to sit there and read a book. Trust me, I love reading, but you wouldn't catch me reading a book about technology. I'd probably like a video explaining it. So thinking, okay, well, how can we do this? Because that breaks down into why these activities need to be differentiated. We've got our visual learners, our auditory learners, and our kinesthetic learners. So our visual learners are really those step-by-step tutorials, structured templates, really giving a clear visual idea of what they're learning. Our auditory learners are those ones listening to stories, debating, talking, listening to it. And then you also have your kinesthetic learners. So the ones who like to jump on and build it or do simulations or do research activities and really start to get their hands on and get involved in it. So when you can do a lesson that breaks down and or has all three of these, you'll really see a lot more engagement in that sense when they're engaging with it. Now, we're going to start looking at our next one, which is our digital futures, and also what we kind of recommend for using digital tools within the classroom. We use a couple of different ones, of course, but also these are pulled from other schools doing things really well as well. But looking at understanding the relevance. There's no point playing Kahoot if it's not linking back. When we think about linking different technological things, there needs to be purpose. There also needs the students to see purpose in it. I know that when we think about using our technology and when we get students developing a digital pitch, we talk to them a lot about, well, okay, you're pitching this to an investor, you're pitching this to someone important. That's why you need to showcase your skills. Which is why it's really important to link those classroom outcomes back to a real world experience. For this one here, I've got on the screen, we do our aviation programs, which is STEM, but we do tours. We also get the students to work and talk to industry professionals, and then they design a solution. This one was our innovation in aviation, where they had to design essentially an innovational transportation solution from their experiences over 2 days in a program, and then pitch it to the judges who judge them based off a bunch of criteria. And students love it because they can see the outcome, they see the relevance, and they see why they're doing it. And that's really helpful because you've got your kinesthetic, your auditory, and also your, oh, now I've forgotten the third one. Fallen straight off my head. But you've got all three kind of learning styles there. You've got the people getting their hands on, you've got people reading and researching, and then you've also got people listening to different speakers. When we think about engaging digital tools, you have to think about purposeful implementation. They are far more engaged in their learning when they understand how it connects. Now, of course, we can't just play games all day. I wish we could, but, and I know the students wish they could as well, but when we think about it, we have to be okay, well, how are we doing it? I've seen so much success from Minecraft education and Sims. Schools using Minecraft education to prototype designs, the Sims to simulate towns where all the students have their own house, and then the teacher can flood the town and everyone has a role in which they have to rebuild the city. We also then have our formative assessments. So if you're wanting to tick some boxes, Kahoot and Blooket, showcasing and showing you what they're learning real time in a kind of competitive nature, but able to record their data and see, okay, everyone got this point wrong. Obviously, they're missing something. Let's think about how can we actually make sure that we are getting all of the content and finding gaps in their learning as well by using these. And then, of course, we've got our AI. Now, some schools are against it, some schools are for it, some schools are still on the edge. AI is a tool, and it's one that needs to be used purposefully, and it's also one that needs to be used appropriately. When we think about using AI, students will need to know how to use it when they leave school. So thinking about doing safe simulations or getting them to try and write assignments with AI and showing them how bad it is and getting them to mark it is always a really good way to show them that AI probably shouldn't write your assignment, but showing them how to use it rather than resenting it as well. I know it's scary sometimes trying these new technologies, but it's also important to make sure you understand what they're on about. But that's a bit of a snapshot of what we're kind of doing, but also what you can do as well. Now, I am going to hand over to kicking off that panel discussion for you all to be able to listen in. I recommend you stay on, listen to the panel, because after the panel, you will get the opportunity to see exclusive discount for, of course, some resources, incursions, and opportunities, but also then any other upcoming events as well. Thank you so much and enjoy the panel. Hello and welcome to How Technology is Rewiring the Next Generation of Learners, partnering with ACS Gifts and BOP Industry, along with our young tech ambassadors. We are super excited to be doing this panel this evening. We've got some amazing people here to talk about their journey and also their careers in technology. But before we begin, I want to quickly hand over to Jonathan from ACS to introduce essentially what they do and essentially how they can help you as well.
Yeah, great to be here with you, Kobe, and also our young tech ambassadors. So yeah, I'm Jonathan, as Kobe said, the ACS. So that's the Australian Computer Society. We're actually celebrating 60 years this year. So people in Australia have been meeting, getting together to talk about technology as a career for that long and longer. And we've got about 40,000 members all around Australia who are already out in the profession doing their thing, technology and digital roles, which could be cybersecurity, game development that we hear about, software engineering we'll hear about today, whole range of different things. However, if we don't invest in the earlier days of education, schools, etc., well, we're not going to have that. So I just want to talk about just for a few minutes a little bit more about what ACS does, and also for students, what's the messaging like? What's actually in it for them around tech careers, etc. And I would figure they would want to know because, I mean, they're the ones who are living in the digital age. Some of us can sort of remember the before period, but also maybe they're not so sure about, okay, we live in the digital age, I've got all this tech, but what does it actually mean for careers and for a tech career pipeline? So yeah, I really want to talk about, well, what does a gateway to the tech industry actually look like? And as I said, yeah, ACS is already supporting this profession, but we also here in Queensland have this Gateway to Industry Schools program that's funded by the Queensland government. So we actually work with 77 schools, as well as great organisations like BOP, to talk about what are the opportunities for tech careers. Now, it's worth mentioning that tech workers are actually the highest paid on average in Australia, and have the equal highest rate of job growth as well. And not just your traditional tech jobs, you can link in with a whole range of things like sports tech and health tech and many other areas as well. Now you may have heard that AI could replace tech jobs. That's definitely something I get asked a lot. But what do I say in that case? Well, it's very much about, okay, well, why don't you train to use AI? If you've got the skills yourself, you'll be much better off as well. The human skills, problem solving, communicating. I know that's the kind of stuff that really gets developed in a lot of BOP workshops, that those are the human skills that can set you apart as well. So yeah, there are shortages in the industry, especially coming up in the next few years in areas like cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, obviously, but also things like data science and managing teams. It's going to be a big one. And look, in terms of like advice, and we're going to hear a bunch of great stuff from the young tech ambassadors today, but the top three things that we suggest are go to industry talks. And if you're watching this, you're already doing that. You hear from people who are actually already out in the industry. Go ahead and make projects yourself. So if you want to, that might be coding, it might be just drawing, designing games, whatever it is, do as much of that as you can. And also, I just want to mention, if after school, if you go on and study tech or digital roles at TAFE or university, you can actually get a free ACS membership in your final year as a way of helping you kick off your careers. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff to sort of get you started. And if you are a teacher or a parent who wants to get their school involved, I'm sure as part of this, you'll be able to get some of the my details or the Gateway programs details. Love to chat more. But yeah, back to you, Kobe, so we can hear from our ambassadors.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing, Jonathan. It's such an amazing experience and opportunity for students. I know personally that back in the day, there definitely wasn't as much push for that. So it's really good to see that that's happening, especially here in Queensland. Now, just as a quick introduction to who our panelists are, I've got Joshua, Kieran, and Nolan here, our young tech ambassadors. I'm going to give them a quick introduction, but I'm also going to get them to share their favorite subject in school as well at the end, just so that you can see who they are with also their video as well. So I'm going to start with Joshua. So Joshua is a university student and business owner of Ascensi, a software as a service, essentially SaaS is what I saw. Business in 2022. So Essentia is a developer and seller of Point Dash, a house points and engagement system for schools, aimed at fostering healthy competition and building house culture. Joshua is also studying a Bachelor of Information Technology at QUT, and has also been recognised as a Dean Scholar and awarded the Westpac Young Technologist Scholarship as well. So pretty impressive feat in that stance. He's also an assistant web developer and student ambassador at QUT, committed to sharing his own passion for technology with other students and the community. In his role at the Australian Computer Society, ACS, Young Tech Ambassador, Josh regularly visits schools to talk about his experiences alongside inspiring the next generation of tech enthusiasts. Other initiatives include the development, concept to delivery for a student-led STEAM conference and an after-school program called Launch, which continues to inspire the student today. Joshua's aim is to create privacy-first, user-friendly solutions that enhance well-being, streamline processes, and make advanced technologies accessible to everyone. So pretty interesting bio there, Joshua. So I'm sure you have a lot to talk about. I can't wait to hear. But what was your favorite school? What was your favorite subject when you were in school?
Oh, I can't really choose one, so I'm going to say two, which was digital technologies and engineering.
Oh, okay, perfect. The question was one, but I'll let you pass with two. All right. Thank you, Joshua. Can't wait to hear more. Next I have Kieran. So Kieran, with more than a decade of experience, um, in the games industry, Kieran's journey began in Australia at the age of 10, creating simple games in PowerPoint before teaching himself Flash and then sharing projects online through that. When what started as a childhood hobby grew into a lifelong passion and eventually a professional career. His early professional years were spent in Hong Kong, working across game design, user experience, programming, and technical leadership roles within startups and indie studios. He later moved to Canada to join Ubisoft, where he transitioned into production and contributed to globally recognized franchises including Assassin's Creed, Avatar, and Star Wars. That's pretty cool. After several years abroad, Kieran returned to Australia with a strong focus on giving back to the next generation, having experienced firsthand how difficult it can be to access mentors within industry and guidance in his own early career stages. He's super passionate about helping students and understanding the multiple pathways in game development, whether it's art, design, storytelling, programming, production, or technology. He enjoys showing how different interests and skills can lead to meaningful careers inside the games industry. Another really impressive bio there, Kieran. What was your favorite subject in school?
I'm going to have to say that my favorite course was, interestingly enough, a film class that I took in high school. It was just really interesting learning how movies were made, trying to make them myself. The teacher was an incredibly relaxed individual that was just always encouraging us to play around and kind of come up with new ideas. And I think that taught me a lot that I carried forward into my career.
Yeah, perfect. All right, I can't wait to hear more. It's interesting that you mentioned a teacher then. So
Uh,
we'll have to come back to that as well.
More on that later.
And more on that later, so stay tuned. All right, and then of course, lucky last, Nolan. He's always enjoyed drawing as a kid, but first started doing digital art in high school through Photoshop editing photos of friends. That gave him a really in-depth skill into making texture mods for the original Doom games. Eventually, he also started making maps for Doom, which then led to understanding 3D and animation, which he also then was able to teach himself Lightwave 3D. I have no idea what lots of those words are, but that's impressive. When he went to secondary school at Vancouver Film School for 1 year and applied as an animator at BioWare, he also then they needed an environment modeler, so he got that job instead. The reason he stood out as an applicant was because he appeared on almost every demo reel for his own class in the special thanks section. Due to helping out whoever and whatever and wherever he could, this very small interest in this very small industry, it is important to be known as a team player, which is the best advice he can give to anyone trying to get in. He spent about 10 years at BioWare, starting and working on multiple games, starting with Neverwinter Nights and ending on Mass Effect. Then moved to Australia to a studio called Pandemic in Brisbane before it shut down. He then scurried back to BioWare to work on the Dragon Age and Mass Effect series. Since moving to Brisbane, he spent some time working in VR graffiti games called Kingspray with friends, and currently working for Game Loft Brisbane on an unannounced project as a lead environment artist. Ooh, an unannounced project. Watch out, that's so mysterious. All right, that's so impressive. Also, Nolan, what was your favorite subject in school? I feel like I could guess it, but I'm gonna hand it over to you. What was your favorite subject?
I wasn't really big into school, but yeah, you might guess art. Uh, but it probably is creative writing. Like I enjoyed that kind of stuff, and yeah, but I obviously loved art class as well.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. That was going to be my first guess, so that's perfect. All right, amazing. So we've got a pretty great panel here. And to get a really good idea of essentially how you guys got from point A to point B, the first question I have to ask all of you, and we might start with Kieran, if that's all right. But essentially, how do you all of you have really impressive backgrounds and you've all been expanding. You've also tried also a lot of different things. But how do you continue to learn within your industries when they change so rapidly, especially with the advancement of AI and also it being able to code, it being able to do digital art, being able to do pretty much everything already? How do you continue to learn in this industry, you yourself?
That is a really great question, and I feel like I could give so many different answers to that. And I feel like there's just like no wrong answer as well for this one. The way that I try to keep up to date and constantly learning is just to see something and try recreate it. It's how I got in games in the first place, like you said in my introduction. Like I was trying to recreate other games in PowerPoint, and I was trying to see how they work. I'm still doing this today. I'll play a game, I'll find some little mechanic that interests me. I try to figure out why the designers did something like that or how it works, and I'll just boot up my computer and spend a few hours tinkering away. Just taking that curiosity mindset into everything I see and just trying to put myself in the shoes of who I think was the person that made it, and figure out the decisions that were involved with it.
Okay, good. So curiosity is key. All right.
Yes.
All right, Joshua, what do you think? How do you stay learning in your career?
Kind of stole my answer, Kieran. Um, Yeah, it's definitely, I think staying curious is definitely one of the biggest things with an industry that does change so much. Even when I look back to when I first started building my first app, it wasn't with AI, and now, we're able to get it to write that kind of in, 5 minutes. So being able to always be curious of how you can use different technologies in different ways, never being scared of like trying something new. I think it's very easy to get stuck in like, this same language, for example, that you're really familiar with and not wanting to explore other avenues. And that, I think that comes back to when you're working on personal projects and things as well. That really just gives you that kind of broader kind of view on how you can build things differently, what you might do in the future. It really just exposes you to more. And, especially for students, is a great way for them to showcase their broader skill set if they're applying for jobs, things like that later on in a portfolio, for example.
Oh, I like that as an answer as well. All right, Nolan, have you got anything additional to add that you think would be important?
Yeah, I'll say with Karen as well, like doing modding and stuff is like the best. But and also just tutorials, like YouTube's a huge a thing. But I'd also just like to kind of bring up the idea of like understanding fundamentals. And so if you do a tutorial on YouTube or something like that, go in and don't just repeat the steps. Try and understand what the steps are doing. Break and modify those tutorials so you understand which, like each node, each step, everything that's going on, because a lot of the technology is kind of a recontextualizing of data. And if you understand kind of from a fundamental level, like what how the data is being manipulated, you have, it opens up more doors and more ways of manipulating the data to the way you want it to work. And I think that would just be my addition to that.
Yeah, well, I feel like you've just led straight into my next question, which was going to be, what are the best ways for young students who maybe these teachers are teaching or students may be listening to as well? What are the skills that they could start learning in high school that you think would be really essential for moving into any of your industries? Obviously, they're all in different kind of sectors, but in general, what are those skills that they should be starting to learn? Nolan, do you want to add anything additional? Obviously, you mentioned the YouTube tutorials. I feel like every amazing business started with a YouTube tutorial, but YouTube is now currently banned for under 16s
Right.
in a lot of cases. So even then, it's like, what could they start doing to learn? And what do you think they should learn as well?
Well, there's a lot of resources out there that websites that they can do, even just looking at what do you call it, like ArtStation, and in my situation being artist or technical artist and stuff. One that's probably not going to be too popular is math, trigonometry, stuff like that. Even though I'm an artist, I tend to have to understand certain things about, like, dot products and vectors is something that I use every day. So, from a very fundamental standpoint, light is a vector and light is everything you see. How that hits your eye all kind of like ends up, the more you go into it, the deeper it goes. So yeah, math is useful in probably most people's work as well, but it does end up coming back.
I can see everyone nodding their heads. As someone who was not a math person, I'm going to assume math is very, very important from what everyone's looking. Kieran or Joshua, do you have anything else you'd like to add to that as well?
I'm sure Joshua will have something insightful, but I just do want to piggyback off of the math comment. 100% useful, 100% agree with what Nolan said. I unfortunately failed math in a few classes. You can still get through if you're terrible at math. It's not a deal breaker. It's just something that I also want to make sure is really careful there, because a lot of people do get dismayed when they hit that barrier of needing math skills, and there are ways to work around it. It is very, very heavily used, though. All
right, perfect. Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, math for me, I was definitely wasn't my favorite subject either, but yeah, it's definitely a skill that's important to have, especially as you start to move into those kind of roles. I guess my advice kind of builds on top of that as well, because fundamentals really is incredibly important, and especially with the introduction of AI tools, things like that, it's very easy, I think, to skip that, which can be a critical kind of later on in your career when you're building different, in my case, different software and different web services. If you don't have that foundational understanding, it's going to catch up with you at some point. And that's when your problem solving skills, which is another really critical component of, how you write code. There are certain approaches you can take. There are often multiple different approaches you can take. Not having those foundational skills to be able to actually solve those problems yourself is not going to be very helpful for you in your career if you're heavily just reliant on AI, because I think we're going to see a shift there as well again in the industry when it comes to AI usage and that kind of stuff.
Just building off of Nolan and Joshua there as well. A common issue I see is sometimes people become over-reliant on the tools as well. An artist focusing only on Photoshop or a particular 3D modeling software, programmers only learning one language, and that can set you up for issues later on down the track. One of the best pieces of advice I was given in my first year of studying game design was, we're not going to teach you, these 3D game making tools. We're going to focus on the fundamentals first. by the time you graduate, everything that I would have taught you in year one will be out of date regardless. So we're going to make sure that you know how to understand this stuff independently to build these tools and use these tools that we haven't even really thought of yet. Just like AI is emerging. Wasn't a thing 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that kind of leads into my next question as well, is a lot of the main audience who is listening to this webinar are probably teachers. And so teachers either teaching ICT or potentially wanting to teach ICT or just want to have some more additional knowledge on how they can support those students with tech. What would be your advice? Because I know, Kieran, you mentioned that you had a good teacher who was very laid back. And I know my teacher was also very laid back in when I was being taught coding. But what would be your advice from all three of you on what makes a good teacher when teaching technology? Because a lot of students, and quite often, if you don't understand something, a lot of them just shut down. So, how could a teacher model and help teach the technology kind of area? Does anyone want to go first?
I'll go.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be careful as well because both my parents are teachers. So if I do say something aghast, I will have to answer to them on it. Paying like a good teacher pays attention to kids that are curious about something. I remember very early on, maybe I was 13 or 15, I was taking a game making after school class and I was just so eager to start making games. I was getting distracted. I was playing around with the computer. I wasn't paying attention to the teacher there, and they shut me down pretty quickly. They, go into timeout, 15 minutes away from the computer, think about what you did. And that was a pretty upsetting event. 15 minutes later, they came back and they were very like, they had recognized that like there was a reason for being upset there. There was a reason behind why I was ignoring them in the first place, and like, oh no, this is something that like you're actually way more passionate than anyone else in the room is about. Like I completely misread the situation there. And like we came out of that with a really good understanding with each other. I promised I would listen when he started talking, and he let me go make my game. And like I just see that so many times as well, like with my own parents when they teaching kids, like just noticing when someone is demonstrating that they're like not following along because they've already kind of understood the assignment that you're giving them or understood the bigger picture and they're eager for the next step or they're just really curious to skip that and get to something else. Recognize that and try to lead them to that as quickly as possible would be my advice there.
It's almost like the enthusiasm is leaving your body. I know I see that quite
Yeah.
often, and I have a few teachers go, I'll tell them to be quiet. And I was like, no, they're literally just enthusiastic because they're so keen to learn or they want to
So
add and
keen.
help you
Yeah.
teach because they know more than you sometimes. But that's a really good point. So helping notice that enthusiasm. Joshua, did you want to jump on there as well?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to like teachers, I guess that I've seen have a real impact for me, particularly in like high school and that kind of stuff, is they themselves were curious and always experimenting with different things. And it comes back to that point that we made earlier about, how you navigate the industry today. It's the same thing when you're teaching it. And that's where you find even a lot of the best mentors and things, when they're really passionate and always looking and are open to new things. That's where you have the biggest impact on students because, you do have those. I definitely was one of those really curious kids in high school trying to see what I could build and, trying to build all these different projects and things on the side. So being able to be kind of that cheerleader, but also that person that, you can geek out about the latest tech trend. I have friends, when there's the latest, AI release or something come out, we have a good chat about that. Like having, I guess, that mutual level of curiosity, I think is really critical in the sense of building that relationship with your students, in the sense of having, I guess, that passion, but also then having that engagement with students as well.
100%. I think when your enthusiasm shows as a teacher, it almost the kids have to be enthusiastic as well. Like I know that my history teacher used to put all the latest articles up on the TV, like up on the screen, and be like, "Look what just came out. This is blasphemy. Like, look through this together." Which then made history the best lesson. So I think that's a really good point. It's like showcasing things that are happening because it also makes a teacher relevant as well. It makes the students understand that you also enjoy teaching it, which makes them more willing. Nolan, have you got anything to add to that as well?
I going back, I'll talk about like my math teacher because I failed math as well. So it's not, it's not, I didn't get here because I was good at math. But one of the things that I would say that really illuminated it when I had a good teacher in math, it was because they told me what I was teaching. Like especially in when math, a lot of times, a lot of my teacher would just teach me formulas and not explain what the formula was. Uh, it was it was years before I realized parabola equations were like for parabolas, like that, like or what that meant, and like how cutting a cone. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? I don't think any teachers ever knew what pi was or how what it actually was, how they derive it, Pythagoras' theorem. Like there's like again like just learning your way up to it made a lot of difference for me when it came to learning math, for me to visualize. So because I'm a visual person, so yeah, having just numbers and memorizing formulas never worked for me. So a good teacher for me is somebody who can actually explain what you're actually trying, the fundamentals, what you're trying to figure out. So yeah, that's what I'll add.
Okay, interesting enough, I also failed math in high school. So it seems to be a running theme, but it is that teacher, I think, especially in, even science, technology, and math, if it's a hard subject that not a lot of students can grasp, and the resistance against the subjects in general normally come from them not understanding. So I'm studying my master's of teaching in the background as well, and I'm teaching psychology. And so a lot of the resistance in all of the research is that as soon as they don't understand it, they'll shut down. So giving those examples, Nolan, like you mentioned, I think is very important. And in the research, it's also shown to be proven very good as well. All right, a few more questions before we wrap this one up. But I just want to jump to you, Joshua. You have essentially founded Ascensi. Can you tell us what that looked like? Because you founded it when you were still in university, so quite young, I could imagine. What did that leap look like from moving from doing kind of work in the industry and then jumping into being a founder and launching Ascensi?
Yeah, so Essentia was actually kind of started back when I was in high school, and that was kind of a combination of kind of things that kind of happened at once. Um, I was, as I mentioned earlier, I was always building different projects kind of on the side, alongside high school. And that was always based on things that I just saw happening in my community. And I was like, let's see if we can make something digital or something that can help solve this problem or maybe make this a bit smoother for end users. None of it ever took off, but it was all those little kind of milestones of building different things that was giving me exposure to how, we process payments online or how we might store certain user data, things like that. And that kind of started to give me the skill set I needed. And then what kind of led to, I guess, Point Dash in Ascensi was my school was tallying up house points manually in a notebook. They were like copying values down from a survey and then like adding them up manually. And, that was a perfect opportunity to automate. So had built a minimum viable product, or what we call an MVP a lot in industry, and tested it in my school for roughly around 8 months before then turning it into a business before graduating. And that's kind of how Essensi was born, and has kind of continued to go on from there.
Wow, that's really cool. In high school as well. That's amazing. I really love that you mentioned that you found a problem because I think that's the biggest thing as well. A lot of students, even if they're in like any industry, but entrepreneurship in particular, they just want to build something And sometimes you can, like, I'm sure Kieran, Nolan, you could also agree, you just want to build and create as many things as possible. But sometimes without that problem and actually solving something for the user, you can it won't work all the time. Maybe it will, but 99% of the time it won't go anywhere. Alongside mentioning that MVP, I think it's super important that you said that, because for students essentially going into this industry, building an MVP is super important. Kieran and Nolan, now you've both worked with some pretty globally recognized companies. I'm going to ask this question in the sense of, if you've ever watched TikTok, that's what Gen Z does these days, is a day in the life. So what would be your favorite day in the life kind of layout that you have worked in? So thinking, what does a day in the life in your industries look like? That was not on the script beforehand. So yeah, what does a day in the life in your industries look like? I don't mind who goes first.
I don't even know what the TikTok reference is. Unfortunately, I mean the day in the life for at where I'm working right now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right now, because I'm a lead, I'm doing a lot of just helping my team out because I have, a lot of experience. I essentially just try to unblock them and give them suggestions on avenues to pursue in order to have better outcomes. So whether it's just like, here's some reference for what you're working on, or that could really benefit from this kind of feature in Unreal, and or maybe we make a tool for that because I see you're taking a lot of time spending on this one problem. Let's see if we can rope in a programmer or technical artist to write some tools for you to do that. So yeah, a lot of running around. I don't get to spend as much time on the tools as I used to, but I still enjoy it. I'm doing that kind of right now. But yeah, that's kind of like the day in the life, I guess, if that works.
Yeah, so a lot of problem solving, it sounds like, and teamwork as well. I feel like sometimes people don't think there's a lot of teamwork in the tech industry, and arguably, I feel like there's the most teamwork, because you've all got to collaborate. You can't do everything. All right, perfect. Kieran, what does a day in life look like for you?
Probably my favorite thing about being a producer in games is that every day is a little bit different. I will literally wake up and have some idea of what's in store. Come into the office and maybe there's been a power outage in the morning. Maybe some client has delivered feedback that we need to address ASAP. Maybe the team made this awesome new tool that we now need to convince like a whole other team to use. Literally every time it is different. One thing that is unfortunately a constant is meetings. Game development is so highly collaborative and it requires so many different disciplines. It's not just programming and art. There's all these little subsets in between. There's narrative, there's storytelling, there's 3D modeling, 2D texture creation, music creation, sound effects, audio recording, just like spending my day trying to coordinate all these people that are just trying to make the best product that they can, try and make their tiny little piece as good as possible, and help them achieve that by standing next to them and trying to understand some cool new tool by a programmer, or why this artist thinks that this model is terrible and needs to get another revision, and talking to them to figure out how it works in the timeline. There's a lot to it, but it is always really interesting at the end of the day.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's so much going on one day. That's so, yeah, so fascinating. I think
Yeah.
a really good insight into what it looks like. As a final question from me, I would really love to know what your advice would be to either somebody in year 10, 11, or 12 wanting to get into your industry. What would be the one piece of advice you would give them? whether, and essentially not just because you've all mentioned like the tools they should learn. I mean like the actual advice of how they would get into maybe a Sensi or Game Loft. Like how would they go to it? Because a lot of students really struggle with getting work experience or getting a job in industry at the moment without job ads. So how would they apply or reach out to that industry? What would your advice be for them?
I can go. Just go to social events like we have at Gameloft. We have events going on every few months that open to the public. They can get tickets and hear people speak about different subjects. Rubbing shoulders with other people in the industry is a good way to not only hear about new job opportunities, but also just kind of like understanding like, oh, if I'm looking for somebody, oh, I know this person, they're not crazy, so I mean we can put them in for an interview if their portfolio is good, right? Yeah, the other thing is doing little projects, or like starting your own kind of like small project with friends. You don't have to do it yourself, and just be don't feel that you need to do don't if one of the things that I feel a lot of people do is they worry that if they don't show, like, everything on the screen is not theirs, they feel that they cannot present it as their work. But at being a part of a project and sharing that collaboration is in itself a good indicator to us that they work well in a team. And then when we do pull them in, we'll ask them, well, okay, well, can you break down what you did? But and then if that person that you created that project with later on gets a job, they'll end up trying to get you in too, as long as you worked well together and all this other stuff. So those would be my few bits of advice for that.
Yeah, okay, perfect. That's really good. All right, so getting in there, getting to events and meeting people, and then also showcasing that work and working with people. Okay, perfect. Kieran?
Somewhat similar to Nolan there. I would recommend game jams. These are really great events. There are some that are hosted online only, some that are yearly, that are hosted globally, but there's going to be places where you can gather and participate locally. I know that within Brisbane there's one. I know there's a few within Australia. Um, I've hired a lot of people in my career, and all of the people that I've hired have participated in game jams. It's one of like the key indicators I look out for myself personally, because it shows that they tried something, they worked with others. You don't always need to finish a game jam or hackathon with a finished product, but the fact that you even show up already really shows a lot. It can be challenging to find these, especially when you're younger, but there's always at least once a year some way to get into one. The other bit of advice I would give is like, I bounced around very early on in my career. I started as a UI designer. I went into programming. I then doubled down on programming and became a tech lead before going into production. You will enter your career or want to set out on a path to the career thinking that you have a very straight line that you need to go down. It's completely fine to try out other things. It's fine to not know exactly what you want to do in games when the passion to join games is there as well.
Oh, I like that. I like that. All right, Joshua, lucky last.
That was a lot of my answers.
It's a bit hard as being the last person.
Yeah. No, I think it's, yeah, who is being, at least from my experience, a really critical one. Going to networking events, it's just when they see your face enough times, when you do make that LinkedIn connection or you ask, you're applying for a job, they see your name and it's automatically familiar. There's a certain degree of a relationship there. And I think that's really important, especially later on in your career as well. Like I think we often talk a lot about, just applying for jobs, things like that. But that relationship continues all the way down later on in your career as well. Whether it's, you're asking a favor, maybe they're a customer, things like that. That kind of continuous relationship is really important. And the other one, yeah, building a portfolio is incredibly important. And it does show that you have a certain degree of passion about what you're doing. You're making that first step, you're taking the initiative. You're not waiting for someone to chase you up or, for a job application, things like that. You're actually going out of your way to actually be curious and, apply what you're learning and just trying new things.
All right, perfect. Or Jonathan, lucky last.
Yeah, I just want to jump in to build on that from a sort of bigger picture perspective, and I'll pick up on what Josh was saying about the MVP, and especially a message for, well, yeah, students, parents, and teachers. Because students in year 11 or 12, they really are their own MVP by that stage. It doesn't have to be the finished product. There's a bit of a weird culture. I'm an ex-teacher as well. It's a bit of a weird culture in year 11 and 12. You've got to have it all figured out. Whatever decision you make at the end of year 12, that's the rest of your life. But actually, that's just, step one. And a lot of the advice we get from especially small businesses in Queensland is that they would prefer you maybe to do a certificate 3, certificate 4, and then a diploma. A bit more experimental, and then just get out there and try opportunities rather than going straight to university and then 4 or 5 years down the track before you start engaging. Just treat it as an MVP, and you're okay to try a few things.
All right, perfect. Well, as a bit of a wrap up, before we close this one, there will be opportunity to leave comments within the YouTube webinar link there, so that if you do have any questions very specifically for anyone, you can put them there and I can reach out to them and get them to answer. Otherwise, Jonathan and I will also be answering any questions as well. But some of the key takeaways that I just really want to highlight is that each one of you really mentioned that collaborative work, so working in teams. So getting used to working in teams, collaborating to kind of showcase those skills alongside, which flows into showcasing your portfolio. So building that portfolio, trying new things, learning things, being curious to try things, advancing everything that you kind of know, and then also trialing things that you don't understand as well, to show that curiosity. Another big one was that getting out to events. I think that's such a big one because everyone always thinks that you just happen to end up in a career. But getting out there and showing your face and introducing yourself is going to be really important. And also another one that I have here is that you don't have to be good at maths. I always thought you did. That's something I've learned today. But it is an essential skill to try and learn. Doesn't mean you can't not learn it. You should be learning how to use maths. It is very important. But if that is going to be your barrier to entry into the career, sounds like you will be fine if you're not the top student in the class. I think I just saw that potentially someone else has something to add. Oh, yes, Jonathan, there you go.
Thanks, Kobe. This is just quickly for especially for all the females out there. Tech can be a bit more male dominated. Definitely, that's something that's changing. And today we just randomly got all the young tech ambassadors, but there are plenty of females as well. I just wanted to quickly mention that actually there's a greater opportunity for females right now in tech, in that there's a shortage, and especially in a lot of areas, and it's not going to get filled just by the guys. So the only way we're actually going to get all the numbers that we need is by having those females come on board. And there's plenty of great places like Gameloft is very well known for 50% plus female leadership. There's a lot of great opportunities now. So just wanted to make sure we mentioned that aspect too. Thanks, Kevin.
If I could also just really quickly build off of that, one of the things that keeps me in the games industry is just the diversity of individuals and the experiences and opinions that they bring as well. Like this lineup here is definitely very male dominated, but like in every place I've worked, it has been a very good even split, a very good amount of individual ideas brought to the table that just brings so much value as well.
I was going to say, I think I've got a few friends, female friends, who are all in that industry, and they're all in leadership positions, fresh out of uni. So very much still opportunities there as well. All right, well, I might close this one, of course, leaving any questions you have in the comment section. Otherwise, you are more than welcome to contact us via email as well. They will be accessible for everyone as well. But otherwise, thank you everyone so much for being part of this. And yeah, have a beautiful rest of your evening. Alrighty, how amazing was that panel? Personally, it was such an amazing conversation to be had. Now that we're finished, everyone will be emailed a copy of this exclusive discount. But we do really want to say thank you for listening in and tuning in for this afternoon. Scan any of these QR codes, you'll get an exclusive discount to access incursions, resources, and also some other really cool opportunities for your tech classrooms, but also other upcoming events for both parents, students, and teachers as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing rest of your afternoon.